You're completely wrong, Mr. Slacker. I was putting on my lip gloss. Hey, everyone. How is it going? I hope everyone's having a fabulous Wednesday. You lose track of time after a while. It's kind of all blends together. So you all asked for a crime court summary recap show, and I started digging and looking, and I found one. Well, I compiled one. I made one. I didn't find it. I made it. Yeah, totally made it. So as I was doing that and as I was getting ready for the show, I had the Letitia I don't know what her last name is, whatever, trial on in the background. And the judge just let him have it. So before we get into the show, I got to show you guys this. So hold on.
Okay, before we start back into the case, there's two things that I need to address that have come to my attention. One is I've issued general orders regarding usage of cell phones, video cameras, all of that stuff. What we have provided for the general public is that they can capture what is being broadcast as a webinar. They can rebroadcast that, and that's fine. Everyone here needs to understand, everyone in this courtroom is prohibited at any point in time from audio or video recording any part of this proceeding in the courtroom. Don't have your phones out. There's not a reason for it. There are press that are here that may be part of pool press. They may be part of some other commercial entity for press, and that's fine. But even they are not recording any part of this proceeding. If that happens, it could be, number one, your phone gets confiscated. It could be, number two, you face direct contempt proceedings with me. Don't do it. Second issue is,
so before we get to the second issue, because that one's kind of interesting, what he's talking about is very similar to the issues that we have been talking about as far as reusing content and things like that. And it has to do with recording things that shouldn't be recorded, private conversations that should be privileged between the defendant and the attorney, or the attorneys between each other, or sidebars or anything like that that shouldn't be recorded. The court doesn't really have control over that if you're sitting there recording it with your phone. And if that becomes public, then there's a huge issue. So that is why they are very strict on what pictures can be taken, what can be recorded, because there's so much that goes on in a courtroom that is confidential on many different levels. Pictures of the jurors, more than anything, that's a huge thing. So when they're giving these admonishments, that's kind of the root of it, is to say, to protect those privacies that need to be. But this one is kind of funny, and I really wish we knew who it was.
I know that we have some people from out of town. I know that we have some people from out of state. And I know that perhaps they're not familiar with the laws in the state of Colorado or the etiquette and procedures for this courtroom and this building. This entire building, the El Paso County Combined Courts, in its entirety, is a non-smoking facility. Also understand, we have cameras everywhere in the building. So when you leave this courtroom and you go down a hallway, and then you go into a stairwell, and you're smoking, we know who it is. Especially if you've been warned about it before and you go down to another stairwell and smoke. I want to be very clear. There is no smoking of either tobacco or marijuana products anywhere in the courthouse at any point in time. Anybody who is here that I learn continues to do that, I may bar from the courthouse pending the outcome of this trial. So, two things: no phones, no smoking. Let me ask, anybody in the gallery have any questions about that? Raise your hand. No response. All right. I'll take that as everybody that's in the courtroom understands my message clearly, and I don't have to take any further action regarding it. Is there anything else that we need to take up outside?
Yeah. I was like, please don't anybody raise their hands. Please don't anybody raise their hands. That was a lot. Yeah, he's not happy. And I guess I don't blame him. I mean, it has been a very long trial, but at the same time, it's not that hard for them to follow the rules. So they kind of should. I don't know. It's been a very interesting trial. For those of you who haven't watched it. Oh, can I move me? Hold on. I got to figure out how to move me. Can you move? Yay, I figured it out without breaking anything. No, didn't work. I'll keep playing. Love it. All right. Nope. That's not what I'm trying to do either. Oh, StreamYard, you're my best friend. Yesterday in the trial, the prosecution rested. Damn you, StreamYard. I drug it to the top and it put it back on the bottom. And I drug it to the top and it put it back on the bottom. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult. I will not let the computer defeat me. I will not let the computer defeat me. All right. So, psycho stepmom. I'm sure all of you know this is the lady who's accused of killing her stepchild. She is admitted to doing so, but is claiming insanity defense. So the prosecution rested their case. They had an incredibly strong case. They've pretty much put her everywhere that all the evidence was found and shown everything that's happened. The only thing they didn't find was the murder weapon, but I mean, sharp object could have been anything. So yesterday, the defense put on their first witness, star witness, and that was Dr. Lewis. I can't remember her first name. And one of the news organizations, News 5. Just so you know, everything I'm talking about today, as soon as I'm done, I'm going to put a link in the description. I just couldn't get it to take before I started because I had too many words. Imagine that, me too many words. Never. The News 5 did some research and found that Dr. Lewis has actually examined Ted Bundy, and she was the psychiatrist that he asked for right before his execution. She also, Arthur Shawcross and Mark David Chapman were some of the other ones where she examined them and served as an expert witness for the defense in their cases. And she's worked with anywhere between 100 and 200 adults on death row, many of whom she said she has diagnosed as having multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity disorder, which is what Letitia is claiming, or the defense is claiming that Letitia has multiple personality disorder. She didn't kill Gannon. It was her alter personality of Maria, who is a sniper. First, she spoke Spanish. Now they're talking about Russian. Yeah. So one thing that's interesting is Dr. Lewis was talking about knowing what causes the multiple personality disorder. DID is what they're calling it. And it's children who were subjected to ongoing abuse, and it can be different kinds of abuse. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to use the words because today is the day I might possibly get out of YouTube jail. So I'm going to be very good. That's why I didn't use the S word. Good job, me. So when their children are subjected to ongoing abuse, they tend to get to a point where they can't cope anymore. And they, she said, self-hypnotize. It's as if it weren't happening to you. It was happening to someone else. And this carries on into their adult life. And some of them, it becomes a minor thing. And some of them, it becomes a major thing, like in the case of the DID, where they take on different personalities so they can escape the bad things that are happening in their lives. So while this is completely possible, when Dr. Lewis was on the stand, the prosecution kind of blindsided her when they brought up the fact that the testing that she had recommended, strongly recommended, was actually withdrawn by the defense, and the defense told her that the court had denied it. So she kind of was standing there like, at the same time that the prosecution's like, yeah, score. It was a little dramatic. There was, let's just say it wasn't pretty. And this morning they've continued to cross-examine her on everything that's going on. And the main question now is she going to testify or not? Because if we look at her pattern of events that have gone on and her trying to cover things up and making up stories and everything else, she seems like she likes to be in control of everything. So it will be interesting to see whether she's looking at what's going on and thinking, oh, I can talk my way out of this, because she seems to think she can talk her way out of pretty much anything. So that's kind of where we are now. I just saw a poll on Law and Crime, and I think 40-something% said they thought she would testify, and something said no. I can't remember exactly. 30 said no, and the others were undecided. I'm not saying she had DID because I don't know that she did, but DID is a sign of not only ongoing abuse, but ongoing and extremely brutal. Yes, it wasn't specified in the article that I was reading, but that's kind of the gist of what I got. And there was some testimony about her childhood and there being abuse, but there wasn't a lot to support how severe it was. It stands for dissociative. So I've learned that I need to start enunciating a little bit better, because when I try and do voice to text, you would not believe the stuff that my phone comes up with. So if you can't understand me, tell me. I always thought I talked quite clear, but apparently not. Dissociative identity disorder. It's the new term for multiple personality disorder, the same as they took psychopath and sociopath and turned it into antisocial personality disorder. We have to make it sound pretty, so it's not scary. Yeah. Not disassociated, dissociative. Yeah, that's why I don't let my Alexa talk, because there is no telling what she'd come up with. So that is the hot trial news for right now. On to other news. You know, we have to make a stop in Florida. Florida is making a run at being the deadliest state because our governor, notice I left off any adjectives for that, is expected to announce a run for presidency, for president. Expected to announce a run for president in the coming weeks. Yippee. And he signed 3 significant crime bills this past week to help bolster his candidacy. So the first one is kind of interesting. He changed the number of jurors needed to impose the death penalty. It used to be unanimous, and anyone who watched the Parkland shooter, I think it was the penalty trial, the sentencing trial, may remember that there was quite a bit of controversy after that, where they said that only one juror had voted against the death penalty. And just that one juror basically made the decision for the group of them because it required the entire, a unanimous vote. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. So now it will be 8 out of 10. And his quote was that one juror should not be able to veto a capital sentence. And he said, "I'm proud to sign legislation that will prevent families from having to endure what the Parkland families have and ensure proper justice will be served in the state of Florida." Which is kind of interesting because at the same time, there is also a bill that went through that takes the gun legislation that was passed after the Parkland shooting and undoes it. It is a bill that lowers the age to purchase a rifle or long gun from 21 to 18. And those guns include AR-15s, which is what the Parkland shooter used. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I don't know. Can be looked at both ways. I think that kind of goes, yeah, we'll see how it works out. So after that, let's see. Oh, another interesting quote from Representative Bernie Jacquez. Florida will no longer allow a small handful of activist jurors to derail the full administration of justice when individuals are found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and meet the qualifications for the death penalty. So the other 2 bills that he passed, there's actually 4 bills, not 3. I don't know why I said 3. One of them addresses fentanyl that looks like candy, and the other one is prohibiting judges from setting lower bonds than what is on the bond schedule. So it's taking a lot of discretion out of the judge's hands. But then after that, he signed a bill that would make child you-know-whats eligible for the death penalty, with the minimum sentence being life in prison without parole. So some people may say, yeah, we don't need child, our word is out in public. Anybody who would do that to a child should be put to death. However, the problem with this is, in 2008, the Supreme Court issued a decision prohibiting states from applying the death penalty for a child if the victim did not die. Louisiana actually imposed a similar law, and they were challenged in the case of Kennedy v. Louisiana, which made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, which ruled that a statute imposing the death penalty of a child was unconstitutional under the 8th Amendment's Cruel and Unusual Punishment Clause, and further banned capital punishment for anything other than murder or crimes against the state, such as treason, because But DeSantis says that he's prepared to take it all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary, if the new law is challenged. So that could get interesting. in the coming months. Sorry, I'm trying to read comments and also read notes. So this might take me a little bit of time to work out a little format here, but we'll get it. Candy fentanyl? Is that what it is? Like I said, I'm going to put links to all these articles that I got this information from in the description as soon as I hit done on this. Crazy psycho worst neighbor ever got captured this morning, actually. I had to update this really quick. So he's accused of killing 5 people, including a 9-year-old girl, which is just horrendous. Like, why? What is wrong with people with an AR-15? Just to, throw that out there. Not that I have any issue with guns. I own a gun. I have my concealed carry permit. I'm totally fine with that. I just don't think we need to keep lowering the age and putting them in the hands of kids that aren't able to make reasonable decisions about whether to do their homework or not, more or less whether to shoot someone. So what happened was he was out in his front yard getting drunk, shooting his gun because it's Texas and that's what you do. A couple of the neighbors came over, confronted him. Something happened and he got set off and went back over and started shooting them execution style and killed 5 of them, including the little girl. So there was this massive manhunt for him because apparently it took police a little bit of time to get there. And they ended up finding him about 20 miles away from where the shootings happened. And they took him into custody uninjured. He was hiding in a closet underneath some laundry. He thought he was safe and everything would be good, but nope. He's being held on $5 million bond, which, okay, that's a lot of money and he's never going to get out, but why not hold him without bond? I thought that was interesting. This one's kind of relatively local and I don't know. It's a crazy case. So I wanted to throw it in here. So the prosecutors are seeking the death penalty in this case. This is a case of the civil lawsuit that went wrong in so many different ways. This is a plastic surgeon who there was a billing issue with his company and something happened and he didn't end up getting paid. And it got a little crazy. And so he ended up in a lawsuit against his former employers. This lawsuit drug on for years. He fired his attorneys and was proceeding pro se. And I read some of his pleadings and they were extensive. I mean, he was really researching how to be pro se and he wasn't doing it soft sit style. He was, doing okay. But representing the former employers was a local law firm in, I think it was St. Petersburg, Largo, Tarpon Springs, somewhere in the little Bay Area of Florida. And Stephen Causey, the gentleman on the right, was one of the attorneys that was representing them. And he handled most of the communication with psychoplastic surgeon. Apparently things got heated quite a bit. Well, one morning before a conference call that they had, Mr. Causey disappears. Nobody can find him. Like he just walked out to go to the restroom and is gone. And a couple days later, the plastic surgeon's arrested. They release all the details of what happened. And apparently the plastic surgeon came into their office building. They have like a lobby and that's where the restrooms are. And he hid and waited for the lawyer to come out to go to the restroom and somehow attacked him. Took his body out of the building in some kind of cart. Now he's in the parking lot with this cart with his body in the cart. We don't know if he was deceased or just he did have syringes of a paralytic agent in his car when he was arrested. So it could have been either one. And then he gets on the conference call with the other attorney's office who's saying, we don't know where our attorney is. He's not here. And he acts like nothing's wrong. Then he proceeds to put him in his car and drive home. And then he switches cars. And then he drives to Miami. And at some point they were able, and then he came back a day or two later. And at that point they were able to arrest him, but they still have not found, unfortunately, Mr. Kazi's body, which is absolutely tragic. So they are proceeding with the death penalty based on all of that video evidence that they have, but without a body, which is pretty unusual. There's not a lot of cases that you see with murder charges when there's not a body, more or less, to go all the way to the death penalty. But what they said was, the state maintains that the crime was especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that the homicide was committed in cold, calculated, and a premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yeah, it was pretty messed up. Like, it was unbelievably disturbing. So if he doesn't take a plea deal in order to be able to, I imagine that they may give him a plea deal in order to find his body so his family can have that closure. If that's even possible. Where he went was just north of Alligator Alley. It's still in the Everglades. If something like that happened, then there probably will never be closure. But if not, then the way he was aggressively fighting his other lawsuit, I could see this being a long, drawn-out legal battle. Yeah, it was pretty nuts. It was pretty nuts. And Grandma got sent to the loony bin. And I don't know if you all have heard about Grandma, but Grandma has issues. But Grandma won't talk about her issues. So Grandma is a former principal. I believe it's elementary school, but I could be wrong, so I don't want to say that. I'm not sure. And let's see. She was watching her 16-month-old grandson when he drowned in a pond on her property in December of 2021. So she was in the house with her husband, and he left to go to the store. She was watching the baby, who was asleep in the chair next to her. She fell asleep on the couch, and she said when she woke up, the baby was gone. She looked for him, and she found him in the pond. 16 months old. She said he was able to open the door. They did an investigation, and they said she was probably negligent, but they didn't charge her with anything. This is December 2021. Fast forward to November of 2022. And she's at home, and one of her grandkids comes over, and all of a sudden she realizes she forgot her granddaughter in the car. She was 7 months old, and she had brought her home from lunch and strapped her into the back seat of the car. And then when she got home, she forgot she had the baby with her and left her in the hot car for hours. And these are both children of her daughter, the same child. And unfortunately, the baby did not survive. So in this case, she was charged with aggravated manslaughter. And her attorney said his client was having a greatly difficult time discussing what happened, not only with her husband, but also with her attorneys, making it difficult to prep for trial, which I can imagine. I can't imagine what the parents are going through. But they've charged her, and they're waiting for the case to play out. But she has been committed to the mental hospital. So that is going to delay the case. It could be indefinitely, and it's kind of a rare occurrence because generally when things like that happen, it's only once and it's considered an accident and people aren't charged because it's usually an accident. But when it happens twice to one person and someone who has been around children their entire lives as part of their profession, then it's, yeah, pretty crazy. Okay. So Miss Jamie Komorski has been charged with 3 counts of felony DUI, resulting in great bodily harm or death, and 1 count of reckless homicide because she didn't just have 2 beers. She was driving 65 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone in her rented Toyota Camry in Folly Beach. Oh, I didn't write down what state that was. I don't remember what state it was. South Carolina. Folly Beach, South Carolina. And she plowed into a golf cart carrying this adorable just married couple. This isn't a stock photo. This is the actual couple. And they're absolutely precious. She plowed into the golf cart carrying them and 2 other people. And unfortunately, the bride did not survive it. And the groom is in critical condition because of it. Absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. On what should have been the happiest day of their lives because she wanted to get drunk. I mean, come on. It's just, I don't know. So to backtrack to that one, there is actually quite a few articles and interviews with the daughter where she talks about the fact that she wasn't going to let her mother visit with her daughter. She supervised the visits, and this is one of, I think, the second time ever she had let her mother watch her daughter, and she left her in the car. So she was trying to give her another chance. She was trying to accept that it was an accident. Accidents happen. You know, she didn't mean to fall asleep, things like that. And it happened again. So there was also a lot of questions when this hearing happened a couple of days ago. She actually hugged her mother as she was walking out to go, being taken away to the facility that she was reprimanded to. And they were saying, "Oh, did you forgive her?" And she said, "No, but this may be the last time I ever have a chance to hug my mother in my life. So I'm going to do it now." I can't process it. When I first read this story, it really messed with me. It talked about all they wanted was to have children. And the fact that they lost both of them almost immediately after having them is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I think there was some talk about prescription medications being a little bit of an issue, but I'm not positive. I would have to go back to the other stories. There's quite a few stories if you look it up. I would never. Yeah. Like, mama bear instinct applies to grandchildren too. But I guess some people don't have the mama bear instinct, so it kind of makes sense. How can they protect their grandchildren if, they didn't protect their kids too? I don't know. So if I'm going to do this every week, we're going to have an ass hat of the week because we can. Oh, I forgot to correct my typo. Should be autocorrect changed it to you. It should be Tao, whatever. The last officer to be charged in the death of George Floyd was found guilty. It was yesterday. So we know Derek Chauvin was sentenced, gosh, 2 years ago now. And Tao, oh, I don't know. I'm not good with words. Did not take the plea deal that the other two took. So J. Alexander Koenig was convicted and serving a 3-year sentence and a 3.5-year sentence. One is federal, one is state. He can serve them concurrently. And then Thomas Lane has a 2.5-year sentence and a 3-year sentence, which he's also serving concurrently. So Tao already has a 3.5-year sentence. And he was offered the same plea deal. I believe it was a 3-year sentence or something along those lines. And he declined it. He wanted to go to trial. And then for some reason, they decided that they didn't want an actual formal trial. Instead, they asked the judge to determine his guilt or innocence in, I can't remember exactly what it's called. But basically, we're going to skip the trial. You know all the facts of the case. Just go ahead and decide if I'm guilty or innocent, like a bench trial without the trial part, because the same judge had presided over the Derek Chauvin trial and knew the case inside and out. So he waived his right to testify, to question witnesses, to put on a defense for himself. It is what it is. You tell me what you want. So he was found guilty, and his sentencing is going to be on August 7th. So he could technically receive a much longer sentence than the other ones, the other two that took a plea deal, which he was offered a plea deal and he didn't take it. So he's really gambling here. We'll see how it plays out. I like the different face, same charges. Caitlin Armstrong, the bicycle jealous ex-girlfriend. Well, no, she was the current girlfriend, but he was cheating on her with the cyclist. So she went and shot her and then went on the run, and they found her in Costa Rica, but she'd had like all kinds of cosmetic surgery. It didn't even look the same. She used to be cute. Now she looks really creepy. So they tried to delay her trial, but it is set to go June 26th. And might need to request, they said they might need to request it to be delayed. And they said that they can make such a request by May 1st, but as of right now, it's proceeding and it will start June 26th. She's something else. I don't know if you guys followed that one, but she flew to New York and got her sister's passport and then flew to New Jersey, and then they lost track of her. And somehow she ended up in Costa Rica teaching yoga after she had all kinds of plastic surgery, and someone there turned her in because they happened to find her, and then they found receipts and everything else proving her guilt. Like, she was really smart on some hands, but really stupid on others. Right? All right, so you guys asked for missing people. I actually meant to double check this one before I did it, and I forgot to look it up to see if there was any updates. So I'm going to do it right now. Nope. Okay. So missing person number 1, the current case, is a very strange case out of Georgia. This is a mom and her son. They left their home, and she lives with her mother. Her name is Brittany Wiley, she's 37, and her 12-year-old son is Rodney Wiley Jr. They were at home with her mother. They told her, we're going to run to Ross. We're going to pick up a couple things. And then they were going to run to the grocery store. And then they were going to run home. 2 miles up the street to Ross. I don't know how far, but not very far, to the grocery store and then back home. So they left. They went to Ross, called the mom, said she was getting a dress for something that was coming, an event that was coming up that weekend. Called the mom and told her they were going to the food depot a mile from their home to pick up some ingredients for dinner. And then that's the last she heard from them. That was it. They vanished. Like, no one has any idea where they are at all. And this happened April 22nd, and nobody has been able to find them ever since. So Adam Brown Adventures is an amazing, well, it's a one-man show. So he's an amazing guy who does recoveries similar to what that one company did before the guy turned out to be a complete asshat. So he's actually headed up there right now to search the waterways. There's a couple waterways along the roadway. Just search there with his sonar to see if perhaps the car may have gone into the water. If not, she recently had a somewhat contentious separation, I believe. So they are going to look into that as well and try and figure out what's going on. But the number of missing people, like in general, the number of people that go missing is absolutely astounding. Like, it blows my mind. If you look at over time, the number of people who have vanished off the face of the earth with no trace, like, where are they? Where could they have gone? I can't comprehend how people can just simply vanish. And so many years later, we still don't know where they are. I don't know. I really don't know. So my other missing persons case that I wanted to do, and I put them both up here at the same time because I wanted all of the information to sit up on the screen for as long as possible, is Bo Mann. And Bo has been missing since 2021. He's adorable, isn't he? So Bo actually had a very successful career in technology. He developed an app. It's called Sober Grid. And it was kind of a social media community app that helped recovering addicts connect, like a safe space for them to talk. And it was very successful. So he was last seen, you can see the surveillance picture of him on the flyer. He was last seen in a convenience store. He buys several things. One of them was a bag of ice, I believe. And then he gets into it's an Uber or a Lyft. He gets an Uber. And that's the last anyone hears from him, except he dials 911 texts 911 on his phone. They try and reach back out to him and he doesn't answer. And then he's gone. So the Uber driver indicates that he takes him to an address that's pretty far away. The person at the address says she has never heard of him, knows nothing about him. No one in his family has ever heard of the address. And things don't really add up with the Uber driver, but the family tries to get the police to interview the Uber driver again. He'd been interviewed twice at that point, and they refused. They said they've gotten all the information they can possibly get from him. So the family is pushing really hard to try and further the case and figure out what's going on. And there hasn't really been any movement in a very long time. And they don't have access to the records the way the law enforcement does. So it's very difficult for families to really investigate cases hardcore the way that law enforcement can. And when law enforcement stalls, families can't really jump in and take over to the same degree. They have to work a lot harder and a lot different. So this is a super interesting case. And if anybody wants to hear more about it, both True Crime Garage and the Vanished podcasts have done episodes on this. I just finished listening to the Vanished 2-part podcast, and it was eye-opening, very interesting, and I would highly suggest you check it out. Lots of information. So speaking of unsolved cases, cold cases, my forte, this one was super interesting. Law enforcement was able to solve a 2-decade-old cold case. It was a college student from northern New York City, well, a suburb, Wallkill. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. I know nothing about New York, so I have no idea. And where's her name? Oh, her name is Megan McDonald. And her body was found badly beaten and abandoned on a dirt road in 2003. She was a college student. And they were just last week able to identify the suspect. His name was Edward Hawley. He was 42 years old. And they arrested him and charged him. The problem is they didn't run everything by the prosecutor's office, who feels like there's a lot of holes in the case. So while police were able to charge him, the prosecutor didn't further those charges, and he was released. The investigators believe that he was a recent ex-boyfriend of Megan's. They had just broken up, and that he owed her a substantial amount of money. But there's no phone records, contact, anything to really tie them together. And there's not a smoking gun to show that he's a solid suspect, I guess would be the right term. So the prosecutor's office was not, the district attorney's office was not quite as excited about it. And the district attorney said the police didn't consult with his office before making the arrest, and complicated cases are normally at least partially presented to a grand jury before an arrest is made. And when that doesn't happen, this is what happens. The suspect is released. And grand jury presentations on cold homicide cases, like ones that are 20 years old, involve complicated fact patterns and rarely can be commenced and completed within 6 days. So they ultimately are going to prosecute it, but you have to follow their rules, said the sergeant. So they are going to start over again and try and prosecute him. He was already in jail for an unrelated charge, unrelated probation violation and drug charge. So he's not a fabulous, upstanding citizen, but they'll get there. But they have appointed a special prosecutor to look into the case and see what they can do to try and get it prosecuted. Hopefully they haven't blown it by arresting him too soon and tipping him off to the fact that they are looking into him. I'm sure you all have seen the news about the horrible case that happened in Oklahoma, where a young girl goes to, it was just after her 14th birthday. She goes to her friend's house for a sleepover. And then the stepdad kills the entire family as well as the friend. The girls had been missing, and there had been quite a bit of publicity about trying to locate them. And then reports are coming out now that the stepfather was encouraging the kids to invite friends over, which is just unbelievable. And he even called the girl's mother and said that they were going to go somewhere to go on an outing that day, and that she would be home later as opposed to when she was supposed to be home. So he had planned this, and just a messed up case. People are messed up. That the whole point, I didn't even want to put this on here, but the whole point is, like, people are going absolutely crazy. The fact that you can sit and plan out how to murder your entire family, but at the same time, you're going to take and say, okay, well, I'm going to have her invite her best friend over because seeing that will hurt her even more. That's just beyond anything comprehensible in my mind. Okay, so the first case didn't work, but this one did. They were able to solve a cold case from 1988 when 19-year-old Kathy Sue Schwartz was murdered in her apartment that she shared with her fiance and daughter in Three Rivers, Michigan. We've heard that city before. So Kathy's fiance returned home from work and found her brutally murdered on the bedroom floor. Her daughter, who was 9 months old, was unharmed in her crib. And they determined that she had likely been beaten and stabbed to death. And they noted that there was an attempted R-word and self-defense wounds. So they gathered evidence, which included fingerprints, blood, and footprints. And they did an analysis and follow-up and tried to find who was responsible, but they were unable to. And over the years, they've kept the case open, and they've still tried to work on it and have been unable to find anything. But in 2022, they submitted it to Othram Labs, which is very well known for its forensic genome sequencing and its genealogical profiling, like creating a family tree from your DNA when we don't know who you are. Forensic genealogy, that's the word I was looking for. And they were able to identify Robert Waters as the primary suspect. And he is now 53 years old. And I calculated back, he would have been 17 at the time. So he was in South Carolina, and they are extraditing him back to Michigan to face charges of murder. And I started thinking about it. Imagine being 17, you do something crazy. I'm not saying he's justified in any way, shape, or form, but when you're 17 years old, your brain is not fully developed. You're not able to make rational decisions for the most part, and you're way more likely to do something psychotic like that. Psychotic's not supposed to be used anymore. I forgot. Okay. Anyways. And then you think you get away with it. You're nervous for a couple years. You're scared. You think you're going to get caught. But, you know, how many years go by? You're probably feeling pretty comfortable with life. And all of a sudden the cops show up when you're 53 years old. That's probably vindication for the family, just knowing how bad they screwed him over. I guess a life in jail would have been good too, but he probably would have got out at 17 because he was a minor. But his wife probably had no idea if he was married, family, maybe. Like, I don't know. Messed up. But at least they solved it. They are solving so many cold cases with forensic genealogy and the advances in DNA technology. It's unbelievable the number of cold cases they're able to solve. It at some point, like, there's going to be hardly any cold cases left because all of these ones that have been lingering for years are going to be solved the rate that they're solving them at. This one, I just had a hard time processing. So this is Jefferson County, Colorado. And these three dipshits were driving around in their jacked up truck. I don't know if it was jacked up, but it just sounds like it should be, throwing rocks out of the car window as they drove by. Throwing rocks out the window at passing cars. WTF. 18 years old, fortunately. And absolutely adorable, sweetheart girl, 20 years old, was driving home on the phone with her friend, and the line went dead. Because they threw a rock through her window, and it hit her and killed her. Unbelievable. And then their parents actually started trying to fight this, and I won't talk about that because I don't have the exact information. So I don't want to get myself into a corner. But her parents called this an intentional act of violence and malice by three strangers. They said she was an intelligent, kind-hearted soul with a bright future ahead of her. And there were numerous other drivers who were also struck by rocks. And fortunately, none of them were injured. But they said some of the rocks were as big as a softball. Some of them were the size of a golf ball. But all of them, when two cars are driving opposite each other and they're thrown out, can do massive damage. As you can see, that's a picture of the car windshield. Unbelievable. Like, in what world is that something where you say, hey, let's go do this thing? Absolutely. Me too. Me too. And in the strange and unusual, because I like weird stuff, in 1979, a landfill worker in, I don't even know how to say that, whatever county, Texas, is walking along and sees a bread box on the ground. And he looks down and he says, oh, that's in good condition. I'm going to pick that up. And he does. And there's a skull in it. Okay, not weird, right? So he calls the cops and they take it and they say that, we think this is a woman that's, 30, 40 years old. Never have any idea who it is. So in 2022, they entered it into NamUs, which is the national database of missing persons, hoping they could identify him. And Othram got involved in this one too. And they were able to determine that the sex of the unidentified person is male, not female, as originally thought. And they are working on the DNA analysis, but they are trying to raise funds for the remaining casework. They actually have a website called DNA Solves, and I'll put that link in the description too. For a lot of these cases, the police departments do not have the funds to pay for this DNA testing because it is so expensive. So companies like Othram, Parabon Labs, and I can't remember the other one, will actually put up fundraisers and do whatever they can to get donations in order to be able to complete the work to identify these people. There are so many that have been identified already. It's really interesting to look at their page, at their success stories on what they've been able to accomplish so far. And that, my friends, is your crazy show of a world and all the drama that's going along with it. So, I don't think I have anything else to tell you. My email is crime, crafts, and fur at Gmail. Yes, it's happened in several states, and it's absolutely ridiculous. They're all creepy. Like, who does that? Who says, hey, I want to go throw rocks? Like, maybe if you're 6 years old standing by a pond, okay, maybe, 26, 36, 46 too. But not like, hey, I want to go throw rocks at a passing car. How can you not think that that's going to result in something really bad? Oh, yeah, that could have been me too. Crime, crafts, and the word spelled out, fur. At Gmail. I will try and make this more interesting going forward with some videos and stuff to go along with it. I just wanted to see how it went. And maybe I can get, I'm sorry about yesterday. I didn't make it on for the end of the frat boy case, but hopefully I can do it tomorrow. I had a migraine yesterday, crazy. Hopefully I can do it tomorrow because, we're almost done with the frat boy case, and hopefully he'll have a decision soon. And yes, please send me your critter pics. Send me your fur baby pics. Email them or in the community tab. And make sure you put your screen name on it so I can make us a little montage video that we can watch when we need some eye bleach because we watched all this craziness and we need something happy to look at to cheer us up. Because I think we need that. Thanks. Maybe one day I'll get back to having more than 5 people in the... Yeah, YouTube's mad at me. Not in the algorithm anymore. I'm in time out, but hopefully today is the last day. So everybody go say a prayer that I have abided by the rules. I have done everything I'm supposed to do. I have tried really hard to make sure everything is good. And we'll see. Thank you. Okay, email it to me and we'll figure it out. Sounds good. All right, you all have a fabulous afternoon. I'm going to go pack a couple boxes before nap time. I will talk to you soon. Take care.